build the ground level from the beginning. So that's the most important part here. So we're gonna jump into attitude and viewpoint. So my apologies, attitude. So having the right attitude, whether it's going into the call, into the sales call, whether it's the right attitude of right when you wake up from the start of the morning, just having that good attitude and that good viewpoint from the jump. That's going to ultimately ensure that you're creating the success that you want. And the attitude, it precedes anything. Attitude is the most important factor of anything as far as like creating success, jumping on a sales call with a client, making calls, having that right attitude. Let me clear my apologies. Yeah, just got back here to Florida, but man, yeah, I mean, having the attitude and that viewpoint of like, man, I'm going to, whether it's, hey, I'm going to, help this client out. I'm going to service this client. I'm going to assist that client, right? Going into the call with that attitude and viewpoint of like, I'm going to actually be able to help them. I'm going to service them to my utmost capabilities and put their interests first before my interests, right? And having that attitude and that viewpoint is super important there. So most importantly, like understanding that the success is not going to come easily. It's going to take a little while to, I mean, you've been in Medicare for a little bit, so you've pretty much got most of it down, but still just being a broker, being the 1099 model, not being on salary, having to do outbound calls, there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve. So you're going to have to understand and have the attitude and viewpoint that it's not just going to come just like that, but also having the attitude and viewpoint of like, I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to make it work. This is going to work. Like having those positive expectations and that positive viewpoint of like, this is going to be great. I'm going to make the most out of this. And, especially when you're calling leads, like, a lot of individuals in the insurance industry, they blame the leads, and that's the last thing that you want to do. You want to have the attitude and the viewpoint of like, hey, these leads are great. These are people to speak to. All I need to do is get them on the phone. Once I get them on the phone, I'm able to service them. I'm able to assist them. So having that attitude and viewpoint, because the last viewpoint that you want to have on leads is like, oh, these leads are terrible. These leads suck. These leads are old, whatever the viewpoint might be. Because if you're speaking that, then you're implanting it. And what you speak about and what you think about is ultimately what you're going to get. So you got to have that positive attitude and that positive viewpoint of like, wow, these leads are great. Wow, I'm going to be able to help this client. I'm going to make the most out of this career, out of this opportunity, and have that positive viewpoint and those positive expectations, right? So having that from the get-go is one of the most important things. And also just viewing this as a career opportunity in your profession, right? Which you already do. This is your career, this is your profession. And just having that long-term viewpoint of like, okay, well, if I just put my head down for 1, 2, maybe 3 years, and I just put my head down, work 8 hours every single day, I'm going to create success. Having that viewpoint, right? So a lot of people, especially on the 1099 model, they work a couple hours a day, they make calls, they make 20 calls, 30, 40, 50 calls. They don't get any results, and then they start to think like, oh, this isn't working out, this isn't for me. And they start to bring on these negative thoughts and this negative viewpoint. Because ultimately what we think about, like I said earlier, what we think about is what we're gonna get. And what we put attention on is what is gonna grow. So we need to make sure that we're having the right thoughts, we're having the right mindset, we're having the right attitude, and maintaining that positive attitude and that positive viewpoint. So like that first call that you make, you're like so excited, you're like, oh wow, this is great. You got to have that same attitude and that same viewpoint with all your calls. No matter how much rejection you're getting, no matter how many no's you're hearing, you just got to maintain that positive attitude and that positive viewpoint, right? So, you're just going to increase your chances of achieving your personal, professional, and financial goals and targets when you create and establish the correct viewpoint and the correct mindset and the correct attitude. Because it's necessary to have in order to achieve your goals and targets and create success. So, one of the first steps, like I said, is having that viewpoint and having that attitude of like, oh, this is a long-term decision, right? This is a long-term type of deal. Like, the success is not created overnight, as we all know, and it's going to take 2, 3, 4, 5 years. But, like we've talked about before, you have a game plan, you have a goal, you have a target, and you just got to stick with it, right? You just got to stick with it, keep persisting, keep making calls. Like, hey, have the attitude of like, hey, I can't service this client unless I actually help them, unless I actually give them information, unless I actually provide them with data and information. So like, making all the calls and not getting the client on the phone, it doesn't really serve a purpose. Having that viewpoint of like, the only way I'm going to be able to help the client is by getting them on the phone and persisting until you get them on the phone, right? So that's the main part of it, is just having that right viewpoint and having that right attitude, and establishing the viewpoint and attitude that you won't fail, right? Like, this is option A. I don't have plan B, I don't have plan C, and I'm not going to fail. Like, I am going to succeed. Having those positive expectations and having that positive viewpoint, and you're just doing whatever it takes to achieve that success. Doing whatever it takes, putting it all on the line, being 100% there, putting everything on the line, and not having any backup plans, right? And having like that viewpoint of like, this is my one option, I'm going to make the most of it, and just making the most of it, right? So that's the main thing. And I know you already have like a very positive attitude, a very positive viewpoint, but we just, it's very important to continue to have that positive viewpoint and that positive attitude no matter what happens, because we're and I'm sure you're already used to it, but we get a lot of rejection, we get a lot of no's, we get a lot of people not answering the phones. But how do we carry that positive attitude no matter what happens? So as we know, it's not what happens, it's how we respond to what happens. So, it might take 20 calls to get a client on the phone. Are you gonna make 5 to 10 calls and be like, oh, this lead's done, like throw it to the back burner? Or are you just gonna continue to persist and continue to make those calls? Are you gonna find creative ways to get them on the phone, whether it's text messages, whether it's voicemails, right? Whether it's, hey, sending them a postcard in the mail with the direct mail piece that they filled out, like, hey, been trying to get a hold of you, haven't been able to reach you, give me a call, right? Like, never giving up on a lead, never giving up on a client, most importantly. So that's the first part, is just having that attitude and having that viewpoint. What are your thoughts about having that right attitude and that right viewpoint?
I mean, so this choice that I'm making, going in understanding that, what I'm gonna need to do, and you say, making 30, 40 calls a day and then quitting, that would not be my mentality.
Yeah.
My mentality would be, setting a goal for enrollments and then, calling it a day. I understand I have to hit the ground running. I'm leaving the security blanket of a salary, and for the opportunity to create a greater base or a greater foundation for my career. So knowing that, I know what I have to do.
Yep.
You understand? In terms of positivity, you have to be your own motivator. Your greatest motivation has to come from within. And when you determine that you are going to endeavor or going to get into I just said project, or whatever it is that you're endeavoring to do, You have to set your stages. You understand? So I understand, what you're saying. Of course, like you said, I've been doing this for a long time, not just for Medicare, but I've been in sales, man, all my life.
Yep.
And I understand that it's a game of numbers. The more people you talk to, the more opportunities you have to achieve your goal. So, with that being said, I just want to make sure that, I am endeavoring into something that is going to afford me the correct opportunity, right? Because I started out, I think, on this journey with health markets, and I understood nothing about what was going on. But I followed that plan, but I left it because, there was nothing. I was gaining no ground because, and now that I realized what's going on, I needed more information. I didn't have the tools or the information that I needed to be successful. So I really enjoy talking to the Medicare beneficiaries because 9 out of 10 of them are my seniors. They are people that have talked to multiple Medicare agents, and they still don't understand what they have. I talk to people every day that have got switched to plans, and they don't even realize they're on a different plan. So that lets me know that there's a lot of incomplete information and incomplete agents out here. So I take it on as my duty, to inform people. That's what I do. I don't necessarily even consider myself a salesperson, man.
Yep.
To be honest, not in terms of this business. I consider myself to be an advocate. So, I get you on the phone, and whether I enroll you in a plan or not, as long as I have enlightened you and given you more information that you had than you had before I met you and talked to you, then I've achieved something. So, I understand.
There we go.
I understand that it's not going to be easy.
Yep.
I understand that, this business, man, it's about building a customer base, your book of business, and getting referrals, So that's what my focus will be, build my BOB and, really pushing forward for referrals. Because that right there in itself, I think, is probably the best form of leads that you could ever have.
Oh, yeah. You're creating your own leads. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So that's good. Yeah, having that, like, one thing that stuck out is having the viewpoint and the attitude of like, all right, I'm going to set a goal or a target for how many enrollments I want. I'm just going to continue working until I get that. And don't stop, don't quit, just keep persisting, right? I mean, as you said, you've been through this, you've been doing it, you understand the attitude, you understand the viewpoint. So, man, that's good. Let's go to the next part is selling yourself. We'll knock out a few of these because, man, you already have a very strong foundation, a very strong structure, but it's always good to be reminded of things.
Yeah.
And selling yourself is like, man, like selling yourself like, hey, like I was saying earlier, this is the best opportunity for you. Selling yourself that like I can help these clients, that it's my duty. Like you said, it's your duty to help these clients. It's your ethical obligation to help these clients because, hey, if you're not helping them, who knows who could be helping them? It could be an unethical individual or an unethical agent that does a disservice to the client. So selling yourself like I am the best option for this client, right? Selling yourself that like, hey, like anytime I get a client on the phone, I'll be able to help them in one way or another. Maybe I'm not enrolling them into a plan, but I'm telling them they're on the best plan. Maybe I'm helping them with a hospital indemnity plan. Maybe I'm helping them with a cancer plan or a dental plan, right? Or dental vision hearing plan, right? And just ultimately selling yourself every single day. Because every single day you have to sell yourself. Sell yourself on waking up, right? You got to sell yourself on waking up. You got to sell yourself on going to hit the phones, making calls, and keeping that positive attitude and that positive viewpoint. Because, hey, there might be some days where you don't get sales, but you got to sell yourself every single day like, oh, I'm going to get a sale today, or I'm going to get an enrollment today. Have that viewpoint and that attitude and keep that positive expectation instead of letting the negativity get into your mind or get into your head, right? It's the most important thing. I mean, because like I said, there's going to be days where like, oh, you don't make a sale, 2 days you don't make a sale. You got to sell yourself to like continue moving forward. You got to sell yourself to continue hitting the phones, keeping that positive communication, that positive energy, and just continue to move forward. And selling yourself like, oh, this is going to work out. As long as I keep persisting, I'm gonna close a deal. I'm gonna enroll a client. I'm gonna be able to service and assist them, right? And selling yourself every single day. It's super important. I mean, the first sale that we have to make is with ourselves. The first sale that we have to make is with ourselves, right? And to the degree that we're sold, which you're super sold, you know that like you're just servicing and assisting clients. You're already sold on that fact, which is good. You're not even selling people, right? And that's how I view it as well. We're just servicing and assisting. We're just helping them. We're helping them make a decision. We're helping them get more benefits, right? But like to the degree that we're sold is to the degree that we're gonna sell, right? So if we're not sold on why we're doing what we're doing, or who we're helping while doing what we're doing, if we're not sold on that, we're not going to be able to sell at the highest degree. We're not going to be able to service and assist at the highest degree. So we got to understand like what's the benefit of why we're doing what we're doing. What value am I getting from doing what I'm doing? Yeah, I'm helping people. I'm creating a life for myself. I'm going to be able to help other people create a life they want later on down the road, right? Thinking long-term, having that long-term viewpoint, right? So like selling yourself every single day. And I know you're sold already, but an exercise that I recommend and suggest other individuals to do, other partners within our group, is like, hey, get out a paper, get out a pen, and write down all the benefits and all the values of why you're doing what you're doing. Because hey, there might be some times when you get down on yourself. I mean, I'm there sometimes. I get down on myself. I'm not always 100% positive. So I gotta resell myself on like, why am I doing what I'm doing? And like have a list of like benefits and what I'm valuing from what I'm doing. So like, hey, there's good, when that time comes, if it comes, you look at that piece of paper, you got 20 different reasons for why you're doing what you're doing, 20 different purposes, and then boom, it just snaps you right back into it. So selling yourself and holding like that high sense of belief and that high sense of faith of like, both of us are faith-based, and like having that belief and faith of like, everything's gonna work out to the greater good. Everything is happening to me for a reason, and it's happening for me, right? Not just having the viewpoint of like, oh, things are happening to me. Like, oh, I'm just so unlucky. Like, no, like it's happening to form us into who we are being created into. And it's building us into the best version of ourselves, right?
Right.
So like when those trials and adversities and challenges and obstacles come, we just got to have belief and faith, which ultimately just helps us keep moving forward. And I know you have that faith and belief, and it's going to help us just continue persisting.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
So,
definitely.
All the highly successful people are very sold on what they're doing. They're very sold on their product, Medicare, right? They're sold to they're very sold on it. Like, wow, like I'm really helping people.
Yeah, I mean,
right.
You really are. I talk to people every day, man, that they need these benefits.
Mm-hmm.
These benefits are a part of their everyday life. And when I went with assurance, the deciding factor was that because I was going to be able to offer multiple providers and options, and I still one of my biggest endeavors, or one of my biggest goals, that I want to be able to, when I talk to people, because just like people who have humanity, they love humanity. but I know humanity is not always the right fit, right? But if I could have a different option for them to present, then that increases my opportunities to get to present them and with a better choice. And that's all that, you know, at the end of the day, that's all that matters, you know, in terms of what you're doing. Integrity is everything. I don't want to put somebody in a plan for me. I want it to be in the plan, because I talk to people, man, I am so tempted sometimes to just let them know that, you know, they're in a better plan than I can offer. But of course, you know, and I still have to, and I definitely give them the pros and the cons. But, you know, in terms of staying motivated, that's a daily thing. You know, you get up in the morning and, you know, if you tell yourself, oh, this is going to be a bad day, or oh, I got to do this, then that's the kind of day you're going to have. I wake up every day, I thank God for another opportunity. And I thank him for the happiness, the joy, and the success, prosperity, and the favor that lay in front of my path for the day. It's all there. It's all there, and that's where I go. That's how I go and approach. And, you know, with what I'm doing right now, I don't have to really think in terms of my getting customers or getting the leads, because they're coming to me, you know. If I don't get an enrollment today, I'm not that down and out, because listen, I know I just made X amount of dollars in our hourly salary, but that's not my goal. I mean, I want to achieve a level of finance that is going to afford me to do all these things that I want to do. And I'm not going to be able to do it working in a W-2 environment. I just know this. So, you know, with that being said, like I said, my thing is, as long as, you know, I have the opportunities, we talked about leads, you know, and you also talked about putting me into the, what's it called? The
live transfers.
Yep. Live transfers. I think that in itself, I mean, that right there gives me even more confidence that I'll be successful.
Yep.
You know, even if I'm not in live transfers, I mean, I want to be in live transfers every day, right? I may want to make outbound calls and talk to people and get new leads or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying. I'm definitely there.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
I know that, you know, and life is not a bowl of cherries. It's just not. And you have to adjust. And I have bad days. I really do. But I understand why I have bad days. And then that's what I work on, so that I don't have a duplicate bad day. I might have another bad day, but I don't want to have that same kind of bad day. So that's where I'm at.
Yep. Yeah, man. Just a quick little refresher. Here. The next part is activity and action. Activity and action. You know, massive amounts of action is the number one problem solver. If we ever have problems in our life, what do? We just take more action, right? And especially when it comes to like outbound calls, we need to make sure that we are taking massive amounts of action, right? The definition of massive is exceptionally large. Definition of action is the fact or process of doing something, typically to achieve an aim, right? Typically to achieve a target. So like you said earlier, having that target, having that goal of like, hey, I want 1 enrollment, I want 2 enrollments per day, 3 enrollments, 4 enrollments, and then just taking massive amounts of action until you hit that goal. And like leaving no room in between of like when you start the day till when you hit that goal for any type of like distractions, because man, having that filled calendar, super important, and leaving no white space on the calendar, right?
Hey, can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
What's on my mind? So we're going to be using a dialer for outbound calls as well?
Yeah, we have a dialer, correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
That makes it easier.
Of course. So, yeah, dude, massive amounts of action on a daily basis. You know, like we talked about earlier, you know, there might be times when You got to make 20, 25 calls, 30 calls to get a client on the phone when you're doing outbounds. But hey, you just got to do whatever it takes. Got to keep persisting and always understanding like, hey, you could be one call away from getting that client on the phone. But if you stop calling, you're pretty much deleting your chances of actually getting that client on the phone. So just continuing to take action, always knowing that whatever we want to create in life, we just got to take more action and doing more than we think is necessary. So, for example, like I said, you think it's going to take 10 calls to get a client on the phone, just think it's going to take 20. And hey, you're either going to be greatly surprised that it took less than 20, or you're going to have the right expectation and get them on the phone in 20 calls. It's like having that right viewpoint moving into it of like, it's going to take 20 calls, 10 calls, 15 calls, whatever it might be, and just like continuing to take action until you get them on the phone, and having that right viewpoint and that right estimation, because a lot of people, they underestimate the amount of action it's going to take to hit a goal or a target. They underestimate how many calls they have to make to get a client on the phone. They underestimate, how many clients they have to go through to get, quality clients that are going to stick with them, right? So the last thing that we want to do is underestimate anything, and always think in larger numbers. Like you said earlier, like it's all a numbers game, right? Sales is all a numbers game. So you just got to keep going through the numbers and keep going through the numbers. Like doing more will never harm you.
Right.
Making another call, making another 15 calls, 20 calls, maybe working for an extra hour. Like it's never going to harm you.
Yeah, and I think too, by me having, I've got quite a few West Coast and Pacific time states. I can fluctuate my schedule.
Yep.
Maybe like 4 hours during the day, just East Coast calls, and then later on in the evening, I can switch up. Just present that into my strategy. Just add that to my strategy. So,
yep. That's right.
I gotta do things. I understand, Ryan.
Yeah.
I understand what I'm getting myself into. I just still want to make sure I have the right support. I feel like I do. And I think that I've got the drive to be successful. So I understand where you're coming from.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. The more we do, the better we feel.
Yeah. And
the better we feel, the more that we're going to do. So it's, massive action. A few other things will just pretty much knock out all this structure, all this groundwork here is understanding our clientele. You're already in Medicare, so there's not much to be said here. You already understand the clientele we're working with. They're seniors. These seniors are getting hit with calls 24/7. They're getting stuff in the mail all the time. They're seeing all the commercials all the time. And understanding that we're not the only one they're speaking to. So how do we differentiate ourselves? How do we separate ourselves from all the other people, right? And, separate ourselves from everyone else that they're speaking to. That's the most important thing. And understanding that even if we do help out the client, it's gonna take a lot of work to keep them as our client. We got to be organized. We got to make sure that we have everything in line. We got to make sure that we're continually touching base with them, because hey, they're going to continue to get calls. Right. As I'm sure they're going to continue to get calls. They're going to continue to see things on the TV. They're going to continue to get direct mail, and who knows, they're going to talk to someone else. But if we're not in constant communication with them, they're not going to be thinking about us. Once you build that relationship, like you said, it's a relationship-based business with the Medicare. You got to build that relationship. So when that time comes, they're just thinking about us. They're not thinking about anyone else. Right. So, you know our clientele that we're dealing with. You've been dealing with them. And just most importantly, like just keeping those factors in mind of like, they're going to get calls all the time. They're going to get direct mail. We're not the only one they're speaking to. How do we differentiate ourselves? How do we separate ourselves from all the other agents out there? Whether it's the way we communicate, whether it's the questions that we ask, whether it's listening to them, listening to them speak, whether it's allowing them to express their thoughts to us, finding those little only practices or only factors of like what you do that separates you from everyone else, right? So understanding our clientele. And then lastly is the goal of a phone call. The goal of a phone call is to service them. The goal of a phone call is to assist them, right? I mean, that's the main goal, that's the main objective, is to provide information, provide data, figure out what they need help with, and helping them.
Yeah.
So that's the goal. And then lastly is, what is a lead? What is a lead? I mean, a lead is someone to speak to. A lead is someone that's a service and assist. And having that, we talked about leads earlier, just having that right viewpoint about leads. Like, oh, this lead is great. I have an opportunity to speak to someone. All I got to do is call them and get them on the phone. Once you get them on the phone, hey, it's a done deal. You're going to be able to service them. You're going to be able to assist them because you're differentiating yourself from everyone else that they're speaking with. And hey, maybe we're not able to help them with Medicare Advantage, but we also have hospital indemnity plans. You can help them with the HIP plan. You can help them with the cancer plan. You can help them with, hey, potentially final expense, life insurance. You got to have those multiple reasons and purposes as to, hey, if that first reason doesn't work out, Medicare Advantage, we have multiple other reasons and multiple other ways that we can help them.
Yeah.
So, I don't want to take too much time going over the structure and the foundation because you already have it. Just a brief refresher, brief reminder.
Yeah.
Attitude and viewpoint, selling yourself, activity and action, understanding the clientele that we're working with, the goal of a phone call, and then what is a lead. So all those things are important. You already got it locked in. It's just time to continue to move forward. It's time to